just like we have before, it's always nice for us to look at these. It's really, really required because our question bank has such an interesting way of phrasing things. Okay, so now as we start looking at our exams, we're going to see more and more code snippets than what we had in the past. And this is a pretty big one. So as you start looking at these kind of code snippets, think about how the best way is going to be for you to answer them. For me, I'd need like a piece of scratch paper so that I could write down my variable names M and P and keep track of what their values are as I go through the loops. So you may not need something like that, but it's often beneficial for us to have a piece of scrap paper. So for this application, we're going to have two integers, M and P, and we start out with M equal 2, and then we go into this repeat until loop. Remember, this is a bottom controlled loop. So the processor is just going to like ignore this repeat statement. It's just a placeholder to go back to. So once we start our loop body here, we're going to set P to 1, and then we have a while statement. While P is less than 4, we're going to print out our M variable, the word and our P variable, and then add 1 to our P variable. When that inner while loop gets done, we're going to update our M variable by adding 1 to it. And we're going to be doing this repeat until loop until M becomes 3. So what kind of output are we going to get from this thing? First of all, this third one is just wrong, right? We shouldn't see those variable names, so we can throw that one out of our ideas because they're not showing the values of the variables. This answer is for those really confused people. So we would be looking at some of our other options. So can you tell real quick which one would be the right one then?
Would it be D?
Yes, it would. Why is that?
Because the set M equals M plus 1 is after all the print statements, and so it would just stay 2 the whole time.
Since we start out with 2, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. And then a little bit faster one for us. Good job. True, false. 2 non-overlapping loops could be nested within a third loop. Sure, right? We can do that. We don't have many requirements on that kind of thing. We could do that. All right, what's wrong with this pseudocode? Love those kind of questions. Is that for loop ever going to run?
Won't it not because 10 is less than 12?
Right. That's correct. That's correct. So it's this third one here. The loop will never be entered because our initial value of count is already less than our number. So our condition will never be met. So good job. Question 4, which of the following statements should be used to validate that a number input by the user into a variable named widgets is an integer value? And I don't know why we have this cool arrangement here with our ABCD options, but let's take a look. So which of these validate that a number is an integer value? What do you think would be the best choice there?
The last one,
The
right?
last one. Because we see our int function. So even if it's not exactly the way we might do it in Python, we see that int function and we know that that's what's got to be happening. Okay, number 5. If my number is 7.82, what is the value of int of my number divided by 2 plus 0.5?
Like 4.41, right? Oh, int.
Is
So
it?
4.5. I see. Right?
What do you guys think? So if we divide 7.82 by 2, we're going to come out with 3 point something. So it's going to get truncated to 3. Is that right? And then we're going to add 0.5 to it.
Oh, I see, because it rounds down.
Because I think it'll do the int to this number before it does the addition. And yeah, int always truncates instead of rounding. So does that seem right?
Yeah, it's super.
Okay. Now, number 6. If number equals 2.3, is the following statement true or false?
False.
Why is that?
Because 2.3 is a float.
Right. And we would never be equal to that integer value. Now, remember the random number generator. In our textbook, they're talking about that random number generator that generates a number between 0 and 1 that is not an integer. So when we are looking at that with a random number between 0 and 1, which of these calculations would produce output between 5 and 10?
Would it be the last one?
I think it would be the last one. Do you guys agree? Let's look at our calculator and see if we have 0.99, the highest number we can have that's not 1, times 5. And then we truncate that, so that would give us 4.
So wouldn't it have to be C then?
C.
But 9 is one of the outputs.
But 10 also needs to be one of the outputs as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
can
I see, yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, with D, we can't get to the number 5. Our first number is a 4, so we would want this one that's 1 above. And you can use the calculator if you want to for those kind of questions. Just remember that that starting value is going to be that just a little bit less than 1. So let's double check this one now. We have 0.99 times 6. So as we truncate that, that would be our beginning value could be 5. And then I can do 5 plus 5 in my head almost. That would give us an ending value of 10. But I have to almost do it in the calculator to really be able to handle the way that they give us these formulas. So our lowest result is always going to be 1 less than the number we're multiplying by. Now here's a fill in the blank. The starting value of an algorithm used to generate a range of numbers is called the seed. Number 9. Is the following statement true or false?
True.
Is it true? Why is that?
The ceiling takes it from 4.22 to 5.
Exactly. Number 10, which of the following loops cannot be nested in a for loop? They always love to try to make you guys make these weird rules. There is no rules like that. We can nest all of them. Is it possible to have both a select case statement and an if-then structure within a single loop? Well, you may not remember what a select case is because those are those ones that we don't have in Python where we say select this variable name and then do all these different things depending on its value. In the case its value is 1, do this. In case its value is 2, is do this. But it doesn't matter because, again, they're trying to make you apply rules that don't exist. So is it possible? Sure. We can have code within other code. So we don't usually have rules like that. Now 12, the expression floor of random times 6 produces the numbers.
5 through 10.
Well, we didn't add 5 to it though.
Oh,
Is it 0 through 5?
Isn't that sneaky? Because I was just like, Justin, that's exactly where I was. I was right there at that last question. Is it going to be through 5? Yes. We already decided 1 less than this number can be our values. And then I'm not sure if that's the format, if this thing is going to try to auto-grade it or not. Number 13, when one loop is contained within another loop, we say these are what kind of loops? Nested.
nested.
A lot of times people don't think they're right because some of these other questions have been so hard. They're like, that's too easy. If number equals 4, is the following statement true or false?
True.
Seems like it.
16 equals 16.
No matter what. Okay, 15. We have a counter named myCount in a for loop. It has the value of 5 on the first pass, 10 on the second pass, 15 on the third pass, and so on. The increment would be written as. Now, this one is weird because we've used so many different things. I do know I have to answer this one manually, and I'll take it pretty much however you guys have it. So you could say plus 5. That would be correct. You might say my count plus 5. That would be correct. So pretty much any way that you can think of to write that, I would give you the points for, as long as you've got the fact that it's adding 5 to that. We've looked at so many different, do we want pseudocode? Do we want Python here? Any way you supply it will be fine. And if you do the Python parentheses, that would be fine too. Everybody's got their good music playing. You can't make it better than me. All right, to solve the problem how to code a repeated multiplication problem, recursion must be used. Now I want you to remember that big bold word must. What does that tell you?
It's false.
It's false. What is displayed after code corresponding to the following pseudocode is run? This one you can kind of figure out what's going to be displayed first. You
Be
don't
the
have the
last
right
one.
answer.
The
The
bottom
last
one,
one.
25 something. 25.
Is that right, you guys? Because Y is going to become A, so that would be 25. Z is going to become B, so that would be 20. And X is going to become C, which is our 15. So looks good. A subprogram must always return a value to the program or subprogram that calls it.
No.
Right? Anytime they say always, we can, be pretty sure if it's something along those lines that they're making stuff up. Okay, given the following pseudocode, and identify the line of code that is recursive.
Forget what recursive means.
Remember, it's that function that calls itself. So it's the line of code where the function calls itself.
Is it the part that it says like sum equals sum n minus 1? Is that it?
Uh-huh, yeah. So line 5, that's right. Because we see right here where it's calling itself. The first time they mention the word sum here, we can equate that to a return statement. Because this is the same name as our function, they're saying that gives us a return. So we're basically saying return sum of n minus 1 plus n. It's kind of interesting how we can dissect things that way. All right, we have this function ABS, and I'm going to say ABS is absolute value. It just gets rid of our sign. So since the absolute value of -5 is 5, and the value of int 5.3 is 5, these two functions can be used interchangeably.
Absolutely not.
No, you're right. They're just trying to make a dumb rules. Using arguments and corresponding parameters to pass data among program modules is an important feature of modular programming because our statements are sorted, our answers here. So assume the all of the above is at the bottom. You think all of the above? Those should all be true. The subprogram is more useful because it's just specific to its task. It makes it easier for different programmers to design and code our different subprograms because they're individual. And it makes it easier to test and debug a subprogram independently of our main program. So all of those are true. Now, question 22 often gets people because we have to remember those two ways of passing a variable. Remember, if they're passed by value, the subprogram is getting a copy. If they're passed by reference, they're both referring to the same location in memory. So this one would be when a variable is passed by value, a module receives only a copy of that variable. Parameters, as well as arguments, could be constants, variables, or general expressions. I want to say that one's false, right? Because within our parentheses of what our parameters are, we can only list variable names. Now our arguments, when we're calling, we could have constants, variables, or general expressions in them, but we can't have that in the actual parameter value in our def statement. So speaking along those terms, given the following two program statements, which ones are the arguments? What do you think? Thoughts? Thoughts?
Are the arguments shoes, shirt, pants?
Those
Or
are with, it's the
is that the
opposite.
parameters?
It's the opposite.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So whenever we define our subprogram, those are our parameters. When we call it, those are our arguments that are being supplied to those parameters. So it's very confusing. When we're working with a call, we have arguments. So we're looking for sandals, turtleneck, and jeans. You can kind of think of it, our parameters are generally what we're asking for, and our arguments are the specific things. It's like if you think about it, it is adding something to your Amazon cart. The subprogram would be add to cart, and our parameters would be the item number, right? That we want to add to our cart. And so whenever their code called that, they would be passing a specific item number. Item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be our argument, but our parameter would still be item number. Okay, what about this one? Is this correct?
No. Right?
Why not?
Well, it's not negative.
Right, right. It's not going to change our sign, the int function. It's only going to take away our decimal place, so it would still be negative 35. All right, here we have a function called divide it. So what would be displayed when we run the function with an argument value of 9?
Would it be 4 because it's like set to an int after it's
Yep.
divided?
Everybody agree?
I have a question. So,
Uh-huh.
So is it because of the order that it's, because I see that at first that variable is set as a float, but is it because after the division occurs it's set as int? Is that what that it's doing it after? Like, okay, so like 9 would be inserted into that as a float, so it'd be 9.0 at the top, and then once we run the set divide it equals int, and is it because int's on the outside that
Yes. Uh-huh.
okay.
So it would do the division and then apply the int function to it.
Okay, and then
So
it's
good question.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like we're doing a math problem where our operator precedence is applying, and we'll do our stuff in the parentheses first,
Okay.
and then we'll evaluate that. So yeah, good question. All right, what about number 27? The function that converts a number x to a corresponding string is the what function? We haven't used it very much, the str function. And I would take that again if you wrote out string. If you have parentheses or not, all of those things would be fine. But that's our function that converts something to a string. Okay, so let's take a look at this pseudocode. And we're going to be figuring out what our output is going to be. So here's the start of it. I think I've got it all on the screen now. So what's our output going to be? So I guess the big question here is, when we output this message, is A going to be 4 or is A going to be 5?
Well, it'll be 5, right? Because that's what it's inputting, like, as its arguments, right?
Well, we're starting out with it as 4,
Mhm.
but since it's passed as ref, remember we're looking at the same location in memory. So when we change that value here, that reference location to 5, in effect our A variable becomes 5 also. So remember, we normally pass by value where that wouldn't happen, but since they specified this one was being passed as ref, that update in our function does affect the original variable. So our answer would be B divided by 5 equals 4. And B would be 20. So we'll make sure that one's right when we look at our answers. But the key here in this particular question is that they have this as ref here in our parameter list. So whenever you're looking at the questions, make sure you look at that parameter list and make sure there isn't anything unusual like that, because that could impact your expected output. Okay, 29, a variable that is declared outside all program modules, including the main module, has, is that global or local scope?
Global.
Global. All right, what's wrong with the following program segment?
Well, is it calling it before it's defined, or is that wrong?
It is, but let's assume that whatever programming language this is allows that, because
Okay.
you're absolutely right.
Oh, is it that it's been declared locally? Is it declares oranges within the subprogram?
Exactly. So it would be the second one, because you can declare variables within a subprogram. That's fine, but you
Mhm.
can't access that variable outside of that subprogram. So since our oranges variable is only within this snack subprogram, we can't get to it anyplace else. So really good job, you guys. I know we go from being super, super specific to me saying, well, assume that's okay in this one, and it makes it difficult. That's why the practice tests are so important. Now, let's see how we did here, because I don't have a score. You guys got that one right. That's got the wrong answer. Someone somewhere must have bullied me into thinking that question was wrong, and you guys have it. I'll fix it. Now, again, question 7, we got the calculator out and we made sure we were right. So the question bank needs to be updated. I'm making a note here about that. This one is 5, 6. There's so many different questions. Sometimes it can be the wrong one. And we did have a lot of errors in this question bank, unfortunately. So our seed value, we'll call that right. Yay, yay, yay. Beautiful. So they all look really, really good. Now you can do review, of course, looking at the end of chapter of each of our chapters, that summary section where they kind of go over all of the information in the chapter, watching the video if you want to of us going over the practice test, and then you doing the practice test,